The sticky sweetness of the Coke clung to my skin, my apron heavy, my dignity stinging more than my clothes ever could. I could hear their laughter echoing, and in that moment, I felt every year of struggle, every humiliation, every quiet sacrifice I had made to keep moving forward. I bent down slowly, grabbing a rag from my pocket, trying to clean the mess without letting them see how much it hurt me. My hands shook, not from fear, but from the anger I was burying deep in my chest. The customers at nearby tables shifted uncomfortably. Some pretended not to see. Some glanced at me with pity, but no one stood up for me. Crystal leaned back in the booth, smirking like a queen who had won another cruel game. "You're too quiet, Naomi. Don't you ever fight back? Or do you just like being everyone's doormat?" Her friends snickered. One of them, a wiry boy named Chad, added, "Maybe she thinks she's lucky to even have this job. I mean, who else would hire her?" I clenched my teeth so hard I thought they might crack. I wanted to say, "You don't know me. You don't know who I am. You don't know who I go home to." But I swallowed the words, not because I couldn't say them, but because I had promised myself I wouldn't use my husband's name like a shield. I wanted to be Naomi. Just Naomi, not the billionaire's wife. But that day, my silence was about to end, not by choice, but by fate. The bell above the diner door chimed. A gust of air swept in, carrying with it a presence that made heads turn instinctively. People didn't even know why they turned, but they did. He walked in. Tall, commanding, dressed in a charcoal gray suit that fit like it had been sewn onto him, his polished shoes barely making a sound on the tiled floor. His eyes, sharp, dark, and unflinching, swept across the diner in an instant. He didn't smile. He never did in public. He didn't need to. His very existence was enough to silence a room. And then his gaze landed on me, his wife, standing there with Coke dripping from my apron, humiliation burning in my eyes, and 3 employees still laughing like hyenas behind me. For a split second, his expression didn't change, but I knew him. I saw it, the flicker of fire, the storm brewing behind his calm exterior. The diner, once filled with chatter and laughter, suddenly felt like a courtroom awaiting judgment. "Naomi," he said, his voice steady, low, yet carrying through the entire diner like a command. The room froze. Even Crystal stopped smirking. I straightened up, rag in my hand, heart pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. He took a step closer, then another, until he was standing just a few feet from me. The smell of his cologne cut through the greasy air of the diner, clean, sharp, expensive. He didn't look at me with pity. He never did. Instead, he looked at me as if daring the world to explain what had just happened. "Who," he said slowly, "did this?" No one answered. The silence was deafening. His eyes shifted, cold, sharp, toward the booth where Crystal and her friends sat. Chad's smirk faltered. Crystal tried to look casual, but her gum chewing suddenly seemed loud and obnoxious in the silence. "It was just a joke," Crystal muttered, forcing a laugh. "No big deal." The billionaire didn't blink. He didn't smile. He didn't even raise his voice. "Stand up." Crystal hesitated, glancing at her friends, then back at him. "Excuse me?" I said, his voice cutting through the room like a blade, "Stand up." Every customer was watching now. The cook had peeked out from the kitchen window. The manager, usually invisible, hovered nervously near the counter. Crystal stood reluctantly, her confidence shrinking with every second under his gaze. My husband turned to the manager. "How long has this been happening?" The manager stuttered. I don't... Sir, I wasn't aware." "Don't lie to me," he snapped, his voice rising for the first time. It wasn't loud, but it was sharp enough to cut through bone. "You run companies by letting liars sit in front of me. You've seen this. You've allowed this, and now you're done." The manager's face drained of color. Then my husband turned back to the 3 employees. His eyes lingered on Crystal, then Chad, then the 3rd girl whose name I didn't even know. "You're all fired." Crystal's jaw dropped. You can't fire us. You don't even work here." That was the moment the truth began to crack open like thunder in the room. He stepped closer, his towering presence making her shrink back. "Do you know who I am?" he asked, his voice like steel. The 3 exchanged nervous glances. Chad shrugged. "Some rich guy, I guess?" He leaned in just a little, his eyes never breaking contact. "I own this building. I own this block. And as of 15 minutes ago, I own this diner, which means I own your job. Or rather, I did." The gasp that rippled through the diner was almost physical. People whispered, their voices trembling with shock. Crystal's face turned red. "Wait, you can't just—" "I can," he said flatly, "and I just did." And in that moment, the humiliation I had swallowed for years turned into something else. Justice. For the first time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel powerless. I felt seen. The diner buzzed with whispers, every table suddenly alive with shock. Strangers pulled out their phones under the table, pretending to check messages, but I knew they were recording. Crystal stood frozen, her face pale under the harsh fluorescent lights. Chad shifted uncomfortably, finally realizing this wasn't just a power game anymore. And the other girl, she kept looking at the floor, like maybe if she didn't move, she'd disappear. But my husband, he was a storm contained inside a single man. "Pack your things," he told them coldly. "You've wasted enough of Naomi's time and mine." Naomi. Hearing my name in his voice, in that room, was like a strike of lightning. For the first time in a long time, people saw me, not as the quiet waitress they could mock, not as the invisible woman in an apron, but as someone who mattered. Crystal tried to recover, her arrogance clinging to her like cheap perfume. "You can't just fire me over some spilled soda," she sneered. "That's discrimination. That's illegal." A ripple of uneasy laughter left her friends. She was trying to act bold, but her voice cracked at the edges. That's when my husband did something that silenced her completely. He pulled out his phone, tapped a button, and turned the screen toward her. "Do you know what this is?" She squinted. "What?" "Security footage," he said simply. "Every inch of this diner has been monitored since last month. My property, my cameras. Every insult you've spat at her, every shove, every drink poured, recorded." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "And," he added, "the lawyer I called before walking in is already drafting a case. You should hope the judge is kinder than I am." Silence. It was so still, I could hear the hum of the refrigerator behind the counter. And that's when something inside me broke. No, not broke. Freed. I stepped forward, my rag dropped to the floor. For years, I had swallowed my words, my pride, my anger, because I didn't want to be the billionaire's wife who hides behind his power. But in that moment, I realized this wasn't about his power. It was about mine. I faced Crystal, my voice steady, for the first time in years. "You thought I was weak because I didn't fight back. You thought I was silent because I had no voice. But you were wrong. I chose silence because your cruelty wasn't worth my words." Her eyes widened, her fake confidence shattering. I continued, louder now, so the entire diner heard me. "But today, I'm done being silent. I'm done letting people like you decide who I am. You don't get to humiliate me and walk away. Not anymore." The customers clapped. Not all of them, but enough. Enough for Crystal to hear the echo of her own downfall. My husband looked at me, his eyes softer now, almost proud. And then he did something that no billionaire was ever expected to do. He took off his suit jacket, folded it neatly, and placed it on the counter. Then he rolled up his sleeves. "Naomi," he said, his voice calm again, "I didn't just come here to deal with them. I came here because I was tired of watching you fight alone." I blinked at him, my throat tight. "You knew?" "I've always known," he said gently. "I've seen the bruises on your spirit even when you tried to hide them. But today," he looked around the diner, locking eyes with every single person, "today I couldn't stay in the shadows anymore." The room felt heavy, charged with something electric. He turned to the manager, who was still frozen, sweat dripping down his temple. "Your time here is finished. Leave. Now." He sputtered, "Sir, please, I didn't." "Leave,"